Well, when I was just a young boy, my mother sent me out one day to pick clover. So I went out and I picked a clover and I brought it back to her, and she made clover honey. And I mentioned on one of my recent posts that about my mother making clover honey. And somebody said, well, that'd be really great if you could find the recipe, but I had no idea where it was. So my cousin Linda in St. Stephen saw it, saw the post, and she had the recipe. And so my other cousin Margaret was visiting her, and she came up from St. Stephen. She was coming out to visit me, and she brought the recipe with her. But not just the recipe, she brought some clover, some rose petals, which are part of the recipe, and some produce from Linda's garden. I told Linda, Margaret, when you go back, Margaret, I'm going to make this and I'll post it at some point and you and Linda can see it. So I had the recipe in front of me. I had all of the things I needed to make it with. And I turned my back for a few minutes. You lose track of time sometimes, and I burnt it. I mean, I burnt it bad. It stuck to the bottom of the pot. It took me about an hour to get it all cleaned up. And I thought it ruined the pot. So I thought, I'm not going to be beat. I'm going to go out, I'm going to pick the clover. They were good enough to do all this for me. So I went out and I picked the clover again, and I came back and I had it almost perfect. This time I was watching it very carefully, and I had it almost where I wanted it. And I thought, oh, maybe just give it another minute or so. Just make sure it's a good thick texture to it. So anyway, this is what I ended up with. It's quite dark and it has a little bit of a bitter taste. So I just pushed it a little bit too far. So I thought maybe third time's a charm. So I went out, picked the clover again, got the rose petals again, and I made it. And it is absolutely perfect. It's just this golden honey color, and it is delicious. So I've got a cup of tea here. Let's try it in the tea. I'll show you what the texture is like. My honey dripper here. Can you see that? It's just perfect. So I'm gonna add that to my tea. Give it a bit of stir. There. Let's give it a try. A bit of a floral note to it. It tastes like sunshine and flowers. It's delicious. So, I'll show you the recipe, and if you think you want to make it sometime, just remember that when it gets that light yellow color, take it off right away. As a matter of fact, you want to strain it right away too, because even though it's off the heat, if it's in a heavy bottom pan, it'll continue to cook a little bit. So strain it right away and you'll have exactly what you want. Delicious clover honey. Well, I guess the only thing left to say is thanks, Mom, for the great memories. I loved that day. And thanks to my cousins for being able to provide the recipe after all these years. So good. I'm going to enjoy this for a long time. We'll need 30 heads of white clover and 20 heads of red clover. 2 roses. 2.5 pounds of sugar, that's about 6 cups. Add your sugar to a heavy bottom stock pot and 2.5 cups of water. Give that a stir and bring it to a boil. Once it begins to boil, turn your heat back to medium and maintain a slow boil for 10 minutes. It's been boiling for 10 minutes. We'll add a half a teaspoon of alum, our white clover, our red clover, and our roses. I'm going to continue to let that slow boil until I see a color change in the syrup. I'm looking for a light to medium yellow. That's the color I'm looking for. I'll remove it from the heat now. I'll pour that into a heat-proof measuring cup. Now we can strain our honey.